Welcome to Crimepedia. I am your host this week. My name is Morgan. I hope you are having a wonderful day. And with me, as always, is the very lovely Cherry. Hello, Cherry. How are you?
Hello, I am good. Thank you very much.
We are back for yet another week of true crime.
I know it's come around very quickly. So, yeah, I know that some people listen to this the minute we drop it. So, good morning to you because we normally drop it really, really early hours of the morning in
We
England.
do.
So, good morning if you're listening straight away. And welcome to any new listeners that we have listening. We've picked up a few and welcome to the podcast. It's nice to have you with us.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. And I think we have a welcome to Sean, who has joined us on Patreon. So she joined our little Patreon family. So thank you very much, Sean,
Thank you,
for joining.
Sean. Thank you very much.
And
It's
if
nice to have you.
you and if you would like to join, you could visit our Patreon at patreon.com/crimepedia, and you can join for as little, I think we said as little as like $2 a month or
$2.
something like
Yeah, I
that.
think it's something like that. And also you can get access to a bonus weekly episode that nobody else hears. And we do occasionally do a case closed episode, which we've just done one. So you can go over and listen to that when you sign up. So yeah, thanks for being part of our little team. We've got an update on last week's case for you. Last week I did the case of Leah Croucher. If you're not familiar with our podcast, every week we alternate the cases. So one week will be Morgan's case. This week will be my case. So last week I did the case, and it was the case of Leah Croucher, a young girl who went missing and basically just disappeared completely. Unfortunately, the police were called to an address in Lockspear Drive, which was close to where she actually lived. And they have confirmed this week that the human remains that they found in the loft of the property were actually those of Leah Croucher. So unfortunately, we now know that that was her that was in the loft. I think we suspected it, but like a lot of our listeners that have messaged me this week, suspected that it was her, but really hoped that it wasn't. It's nice to think that she would be out there living her life somewhere, but unfortunately now it's been confirmed that they are hers. So the investigation will continue, and we will keep you updated as and when we can with any news from Thames Valley Police.
Yeah, I really hope that we get some more answers out of this case and find out exactly what happened and why. It's
It's going to be
such an
difficult.
unfortunate story.
The
It is
main
very difficult.
the main suspect in the case, if you haven't listened to last week's case, go back and have a listen. But unfortunately, the main suspect can't be punished if it was him. So
Yeah,
yeah, let's hope that her family gets some sort of answers as to what happened and why it happened.
such a sad story.
It really is. It really is. We've got tickets released now for CrimeCon 2023. If you have joined us at CrimeCon before, you'll know what we're talking about. CrimeCon is it's a huge kind of event in London that happens every year, and anybody who's anybody in the true crime world is usually there. You have podcasters, you have authors, they have great live speakers, there
Hmm.
are psychologists there are psychotherapists, there are all sorts of different people. There are loads of things that you can get involved in. You can get inside the mind of serial killers, you can speak to victims' families, and there's lots of stuff that you can get involved in. It's going to be at London Tower Bridge, Leonardo Hotel, Tower Bridge next year in June, and tickets are now on sale. As always, early bird tickets, you get better prices the sooner you book. You can use our code Crimepedia at checkout, which will give you a further 10% off of your prices for your tickets as well.
Yeah. And I know that they're still scheduling things and events and speakers,
Yeah.
and hopefully we will be involved in some really big things next year. So we would
Yeah.
love for you to join us.
There's a lot of things going on next year. It's probably going to be, I think, the best one so far. We've had a lot
I think
of
so.
really good stuff happening at CrimeCon. It's going to be really good. So if you can join us, that would be amazing. We'd love to meet you there. You can come and meet people on Podcast Row. There's going to be loads of content creators, YouTubers, and we'll be there. So you can come and meet us too.
And I guarantee there will be no hotel fires.
I really hope not. I really hope not this year.
All right. Well, with all of that behind us, how about we get into this week's episode?
Okay.
On Friday, November 10th, 1995, 13-year-old Brad Hansen would wake up early, hop on a bike, and ride to a friend's house. two seventh grade boys had made plans early in the week to spend the day off school hanging out and playing video games. But to the horror of Brad's family, he would never return home. This is Crimepedia, and this is What Happened to Brad. All right, Sherry. So Friday, November 10th, 1995 was a day off school for the kids at Centennial Middle School in Ahwatukee, Arizona, a suburb of Phoenix. Earlier in the week, 12-year-old Brad Hansen had made plans to hang out with his friend Jeremy Bach. Knowing that neither of their parents knew that there was no school that day, both boys would wake up and get ready as though they were going to school.
Oh, sneaky.
Sneaky little boys. Now, after getting ready, Brad would borrow a neighbor's bike and ride over to Jeremy's house. Jeremy's stepfather, Daniel Bach, saw both boys in the kitchen on the morning of the 10th, before heading to work at around 7 a.m. Now, Daniel believed that the boys would be going to school shortly after he left the house. Now, at around 8 a.m., Brad's mother, Rhonda Michi, realized that with Veterans Day falling on the 11th, which is a Saturday, there would be no school on that day.
So she's just realized, okay,
She realizes, like, oh, wait a
where are the
second.
boys?
Yeah, so it's like, I just saw my son getting ready for school.
Yeah.
And now I realize there's no school because tomorrow is Veterans Day, no school today. Now, Rhonda would begin paging Brad to find out where he was, to which she received no response. Rhonda would return home from work at around 2 p.m. to find that Brad was not home. Rhonda immediately sensed that something was not right, since she had not heard back from Brad. Rhonda would begin calling neighbors, Brad's classmates, and friends to see if they had seen him. Eventually, she would call the Box home. Jeremy answered the phone and would tell Rhonda that Brad had been at his house earlier in the morning but had left. She would tell Jeremy that if he did see Brad, to let him know that if he was not home by 5 p.m., she was going to call the police.
Oh, just trying to scare him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good motherly tactic right there.
Yeah,
Right?
phoning the police. Come and get you.
Now, after speaking to Jeremy, Rhonda would then call Daniel Bach to let him know that she believed that Brad had run away and that he did not have permission to stay the night at the Bach's house.
Oh, okay.
Now, Daniel would tell Rhonda that he would talk with Jeremy when he got home from work and would call her back once he knew what was going on. Just quick note, should be noted, Daniel Bach actually never called Rhonda back that night.
Oh, no.
So,
come on.
Stepfather did not follow through with what he was supposed to do.
That's crazy.
Shortly after 5 p.m., Rhonda would call Phoenix police, as she said she would, to report Brad as missing. Now, police would first classify Brad's case as a runaway rather than a missing person.
Okay.
It would remain this way for the next 8 weeks.
8 weeks?
And, yeah. Yes.
He's a kid. He's a little kid.
He's 12. He's 12 years old.
I mean,
and I was thinking about this, and I don't know the answer to this. I mean, maybe someone out there listening knows the answer. Maybe, Sherry, maybe you know the answer. But what do you think the difference between being reported as a runaway versus a missing child would be for police? I would assume that the efforts they're putting into it is probably going to be different, right?
Well, I guess you're thinking, abduction, aren't you? If it's missing person, they're thinking it's abduction, that somebody's taken the kid rather than the kid has just run away. So maybe they treat it differently because of that. I'm not sure.
Maybe. I mean, I can tell you that with this case, and it seems like with them classifying it as a runaway, there wasn't a whole lot of policing going on at the beginning.
I mean, I know we have police officers that are in America that listen to this show. So by all means, if you know the answer to this, then yeah, give us a shout and let us know. Because I don't know how procedures work like that over there.
I think with a 12-year-old, you, regardless if it's runaway or a missing child or abduction, I say you handle it the exact same way, right?
I mean, how sophisticated is a 12-year-old in a runaway? I mean, 15, 16, slightly different. They're slightly more sneaky and mischievous, aren't they, to be able to get away? And they've probably got things set in place for how they're going to get away. 12-year-old, maybe not. you know?
A 12-year-old, you would if it's a runaway situation, you would expect them to probably be at a friend's house,
That's
right?
right, yeah, or picked up somewhere, they're not gonna be sophisticated
Mhm.
enough to save their pocket money up to be able to get a train ticket to get away and start a new
Right.
life. So I would think maybe
Right, exactly.
a later teenager, you've got a lot more difficulties with that kid knowing a bit more. But I think, no,
Mhm.
it's a 12-year-old, they should have all hands on deck for that.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Now, over the weekend, Rhonda would continue searching for Brad. In talking with neighbors and classmates, she had hoped that maybe someone had seen him or had known where he might have been staying.
Mm.
Now, after speaking with numerous friends and classmates, Rhonda did begin to hear a worrisome rumor that a gun had been fired at the Box home that morning.
Oh, no.
On Monday, November 13th, Rhonda would once again call Daniel Bach and tell him about the rumor of a gun being fired at his home the day Brad disappeared.
Mm.
Rhonda told Daniel that she was told that Brad had fired a gun in Jeremy's direction, barely missing him, and the bullet hit a wall. Brad was now supposedly in possession of the gun and was going to kill himself.
Oh, no.
Now, Daniel would tell Rhonda that he was sure that all the guns were safely in their place at home and that he did not believe that any guns were missing. Daniel would then call his girlfriend Debbie to have her check that all the handguns were in the home, which she was able to confirm that they were all at home and located where they were always kept.
Okay.
So it seems like, okay,
Yeah,
doesn't seem like
panic
Brad
over.
has a gun
Yeah. It's just a
and
rumor.
everything's okay. Yeah,
Mm.
so it seems like it's just a rumor. Now, shortly after her call with Daniel, Debbie did arrange for Jeremy to call Rhonda back so that he could tell her what happened that day. Jeremy would tell Rhonda that Brad had left the house that morning wearing his backpack and rode off on a bike. When asked what his mood was like when he left, Jeremy would tell Rhonda that Brad said that his quote unquote life sucked. So
That's a strange thing for a 12-year-old to say. Just
it,
like that.
it is it is, but it's not. I mean,
My life sucks. I mean, your life would have to be pretty bad for them to come out with that when someone says to you, "How are you?" Life sucks, you know?
but 12-year-olds, 12, 13-year-olds, like middle school kids, they can be dramatic that way sometimes, you
Yeah,
know?
but usually not with a friend's parent. Usually, maybe a
Mhm.
parent you know really well, you could just say, "Oh, yeah, things are a bit rubbish,"
Oh,
but
no, no, he said this I'm sorry, he said this to Brad. So
oh,
Brad
okay. I thought you
I'm
said it to the
sorry,
parent.
no, no, Jeremy Brad said this to Jeremy. I'm
Jeremy. Oh,
sorry.
okay. I
Yeah,
thought you said it to the dad, and I was
yeah.
like, "Well, that's a
No,
weird thing
no.
to say to a parent." Okay.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, but he said this he's Brad said this to Jeremy that
Right,
his
okay.
life sucks supposedly.
Yeah.
Now, on this same day, a school administrator by the name of Ann Schnelling would meet with Jeremy as well as other classmates to see if she could learn any new information that could help locate Brad.
Mhm.
Now, she would learn that in addition to Brad, a classmate named Taylor Smith had also been to the Box home the day Brad went missing. When confronted with this information, Jeremy would tell Mrs. Schnelling that Brad had come over but left, saying that he would be back in 10 minutes, but he never came back. Now, Mrs. Schnelling would then speak with Taylor and asked what happened when she arrived at the Bach home. Taylor would tell her that when she got to the home, Brad's neighbor's bike was parked in the driveway. Once inside, she noticed Brad's backpack and a pager sitting on the kitchen table.
Okay.
When asked where he was, Jeremy simply told her that he had left. Now, thinking that they were playing a trick on her,
Oh, okay.
Taylor would begin looking around the house for Brad before deciding that he actually was not there.
Right.
Jeremy would tell Taylor that he and Brad had got into a fight while playing a video game. Jeremy said that he had called Taylor a name. He, as in Jeremy, had called Taylor a name
Yeah.
and that it pissed Brad off.
Okay.
The two would fight before Brad decided to leave the house. All right. Now, Taylor would also tell Mrs. Schnelling that she had seen some bloody clothes in the washer and that the shirt Jeremy was wearing had a hole and some blood on it. When Taylor had pointed out the blood spot in the kitchen and a small spot on his clothing to Jeremy, Jeremy told Taylor that it was because during the fight, Brad had hit him in the face with a bar stool that caused the blood
What?
spots on his shirt and the floor.
This is
Yeah, so he's
this is
saying that
yeah.
every time this is what you're going to see because I'm going to go over a few different times when he's kind of talked about what happened.
Hmm.
Every time Jeremy talks about what happened, it changes,
Changes a bit.
and there's new information that comes out every time,
Right.
okay?
But, I mean, he hit his
Uh,
friend in the face with a bar stool.
yeah, he's saying that Brad had hit him in the face with a bar stool,
That's
yes.
that's pretty, like, that's pretty angry. That's for something
That's
quite
really angry,
quite so small.
and you would think that if you got hit in the face with a bar stool, there would be a little bit more than, like,
More
some,
than, yeah, a couple of
y
spots of
yeah, you'd
blood.
probably have a, black eye. I had a friend that was hit in the face, with, it wasn't a bar stool, it was like a, plastic, like, Fisher Price, like, stool or
Mm.
chair or something,
Yeah.
which gave him, like, his whole eye swelled up. It was black, it blew, it was a
Mm.
mess, right?
Yeah.
So you think getting hit in the face with a bar stool, you would have some sort of damage,
Yeah.
some sort of black eye,
Yeah.
but there didn't seem to be anything wrong with Jeremy.
And also, I'd be interested to see, like, this bar stool, how big it is and what it's made of. I
Mhm.
mean, are we talking about a wooden bar
Exactly.
stool, a plastic bar stool? I mean, that sounds like this guy would have a lot more. I mean, where did the blood come from? If he's got no sort of visible kind of cuts or anything like
Exactly.
that, where did the blood come from?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a bit strange. I
Right.
think I'd be questioning that.
Oh, no, absolutely. Taylor also noticed a hole in the kitchen wall, which Jeremy had told her that earlier Brad and Jeremy were messing around with
Mm.
one of his stepfather's guns, and that Brad had fired a
Oh.
shot at him
Mm.
and missed him with the bullet then hitting the wall.
Do
Okay.
people usually leave guns loaded there? Are they usually loaded when they're stored away?
I mean, I would think that if you have it in a secure location, I would assume so.
I thought that you were supposed to. I thought that the gun. Well, I don't know if it's just here. I thought your ammunition and your guns had to be separate. I didn't realize they were allowed to be in the same
Mm-mm.
place.
I don't I no, I there's no regulations in regards to that. Mm-mm.
Wow, that's
No.
crazy.
So you ask, are they normally stored with
Yeah, with
ammunition in them?
ammunition in the chambers.
They are. I mean, I can tell you that there are people that store their guns with it
Loaded.
with guns loaded, right? Now, most responsible gun owners would have these guns secured, and most responsible gun owners would not leave them laying around with bullets or, ammunition in them.
No, they'd be locked in a cupboard somewhere.
Right.
In a gun-proof cupboard.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
crazy.
Exactly. Now, after receiving this information from Taylor, Miss Schnelling would once again speak to Jeremy, this time confronting him with the rumor about the gun. Jeremy would tell her that he and Brad had gotten into a fight that morning. So he
Yeah.
did say that they get in a fight. They did get in a fight. And that before walking into the house, Brad had picked up a bar stool and hit him in the head. Now, Jeremy was still adamant that the rumor about the gun was not true and that no gun had been shot in the home that day.
So where does the hole come from?
Exactly. Now, Missionelli would also call Daniel Bach and inform him about the rumors that the boys had been playing with guns. Daniel would hold firm and tell Missionelli that there was no gunplay in the house and stated that there was no bullet hole in any wall.
Okay.
All right.
Well, that's easily cleared
Now,
up. She can just pop round there and have a
yep,
look.
there you go. If is there a bullet hole? No bullet hole. Okay, we're
Yeah.
done. That settles it. Now, days would turn into weeks with no news or updates from the police. It wouldn't be until December 5th when Phoenix police decided that they needed to meet with Jeremy Bach.
That
Almost 2
long?
months
2
later.
months? Surely that would be, like,
Yes.
straight away.
Nope.
Wow,
It
okay.
was until December 5th. So you remember
Yeah,
Brad
that's
went missing on November 10th.
November 10th. Yeah, that's crazy.
So you're talking
Yeah,
what?
about a month and a bit.
50,
Mm,
55 days roughly
that's
that they
crazy. It's
go
too
without speaking
long.
to Jeremy.
That's too long.
An officer from the Phoenix Police Department was joined by Miss Snelling in an interview with Jeremy at the middle school. At this point, police still considered it a runaway case and had no reason to believe that any crime was committed. The officer was simply looking for information from Jeremy that could help them figure out where Brad had run off to. Jeremy would tell the officer that once again he and Brad had gotten into a fight that morning and that Brad had thrown a butter knife at him
Oh, now it's a
and had
knife.
beat now it's a knife and had beaten him up before Brad decided to go home for 10 minutes, but then he never returned. Okay. So now
This
we're
is
at they had a
fishy.
fight. We had a fight.
Yeah.
He threw a butter knife at him and Brad beat him up.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm.
Now, when asked about the gun rumor, Jeremy told the officer that he had made up the rumor and that there was never a gun. Jeremy would then tell the officer that he thought Brad had either run off to Tucson, Arizona with a man named Poppy, or that he had run away to California to be with his dad. Okay, fair.
Okay, I can see that. I can see a
The
12-year-old trying to run away to be with their dad. I get that. I can see that
Exactly.
happening. But this is very strange. The story has changed too many times already. I'd be very
It
suspicious of
has.
this kid.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, after speaking to Jeremy, Phoenix police would then speak to Daniel Bach by telephone. Daniel would explain to the detective that he had checked a 357 revolver and that it had not been fired and was still in its hiding spot in the living room under the couch cushion.
Oh, great hiding spot. Because a 12-year-old's not going to find that.
Oh, no, never. You're never going to find that, right?
Absolutely ridiculous.
He would once again state that there had been no shooting in the home and that there were no bullet holes in the wall.
Really, he should be fined for being an irresponsible gun
Oh,
holder for that.
100%.
I mean, that's
100%.
really bad.
Yeah.
You've got kids in the house
100%.
and you leave a loaded gun under the cushion on the couch. Clever
Mhm. Yeah.
parenting.
Yes. Never find that.
No.
Never find that. Now, a second interview was scheduled on December 14th between police and Jeremy, and this was to take place in the home of Daniel Bach.
Oh,
While
finally.
in the while in the kitchen, detectives would take note of what appeared to be freshly patched hole in the wall.
Oh, okay. To cover the non-existent bullet hole that was there.
Exactly.
Jeez. Daniel
Now,
Brock's got
Daniel
a
would.
lot to talk about. He's got a lot
Oh,
to answer for, hasn't he? This guy is
yes, he
obviously
does.
lying.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, Daniel would bring the 357 handgun to the detectives and tell them that he had smelt the gun and knew that it had not been fired.
Right, okay. This guy is screaming guilty in my ears already.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
This is
Oh,
crazy.
trust me. I smelt the gun. It wasn't fired.
Mm,
Trust me.
yeah. That's
No
ridiculous. I'm
way.
sure the police laughed at that.
What? Okay. Oh my. Just think about this. You have a gun underneath the cushions of a couch,
Mm.
right? And you leave it loaded.
And you've
You
got kids
leave
in
it
your
loaded.
house.
You have kids in your house. And I should okay. This is the strange thing about this whole situation. So this is Daniel Bach, right? Daniel Bach is stepfather.
Yeah.
Jeremy Bach, who is not his biological son, is
Mhm.
living with him. It's Daniel Bach, Jeremy Bach, his stepson,
And
and he has a
mum.
girlfriend.
Okay.
Mom, no, mom's not. Mom is not here. Mom is in Las
Oh, okay.
Vegas.
Right, okay. On
So
holiday or like living?
no, she lives there.
Okay. So he's got her
So
son and he's the
yes,
stepdad.
yes.
And okay.
So strange situations, right?
Yeah.
The following day, detectives would return to the Bach home to re-interview Jeremy. Jeremy would tell the detectives that he and Brad were playing with the guns that morning. At some point, Brad had fired a gun towards Jeremy, and the bullet nearly missed hitting him in the shoulder. Now, detectives would note that the bullet hole did appear to have been much lower than the height of where Jeremy's shoulders would have been.
Mhm.
So they asked Jeremy to demonstrate what happened. As Jeremy was demonstrating these events, detectives would note that Jeremy began to lower himself in order for the hole to align with his shoulders. So it almost seemed to them as though while he was kind of reenacting what happened, he noticed that the bullet
Yeah.
hole was too low, so he just kept like kind of shrinking down a little bit until eventually like it would make sense. Now, as detectives were ending the interview, Jeremy leaned over to one of the detectives and said, "You guys really think I did him, don't you?" Now
Jeremy
the
said
detective
that.
Jeremy said this to the detective, right?
Okay.
Now the detective would reply that they did have some concerns because of the lies that he had told them in previous interviews. Jeremy would then state to the detective, "If I shot him, it would ruin my entire life forever."
Oh, okay. So he's already knows the consequences of this.
Oh, he does. Yeah.
Mm.
At this point, detectives did not have enough evidence to arrest Jeremy, but they did leave with obviously more suspicion towards him.
They need to get in there with some luminol. That's what they need to do.
They do. You would think they would, right?
Straight away. That's what I'd be asking for. I'd get a warrant to, if you can do that over there, I would be getting a warrant to go and search that property. And I would be having
Mhm.
forensics in there with luminol because that would show up any blood that these two have tried to clear up.
Well, they didn't do that initially. It would almost be another month until
Seriously?
a break in the case happened, okay?
Hmm.
Now, the evidence that the police were waiting for would finally come on January 9th, 1996, when city sanitation workers made an unsettling discovery. While on a routine trash pickup through the Box neighborhood, a worker noticed dry blood on top and the size of a 90-gallon trash bin outside of Daniel Box's home. Now, there was enough blood present that the workers immediately notified Phoenix police.
Right. Good for them. Well done.
Upon a closer look, police found that the inside of the lid and the walls of the bin had been splattered with blood, which had run down the sides to form a pool of blood and other human bodily fluids 2 inches deep at the bottom.
Oh, so he had been in that bin for a while.
It was a significant amount of blood and human.
Yeah. Bodily
I just
fluids.
don't even want to think about it. It's so
No,
gross, right?
that is gross.
The blood evidence was tested, and the results were consistent with blood coming from a offspring of Rhonda Michi.
Oh, bless her. Poor Rhonda.
Now, in additional searches of the home, police would seize 2 unsecured handguns, finding blood-stained grout between some of the ceramic tiles on the kitchen floor, and blood on the seat and legs of a kitchen chair.
Too little, too late.
It is, yeah. Now, by January 1996, Jeremy Bach had moved to Las Vegas in order to live with his mother.
Mm.
Jeremy would be interviewed by a Las Vegas police detective on February 16th, 1996,
Wow.
where his story once again changed. During this interview, Jeremy would tell detectives that he and Brad had been playing with the guns the morning of November 10th. As they were playing, Jeremy claimed that he had bumped his hand onto something, which caused him to accidentally pull the trigger, and Brad was killed.
This is starting to sound a bit more like the truth.
Well, we're getting closer.
Mm.
We are getting
A bit
closer.
more, yeah.
But the problem I have with this is he said he bumped his hand, which caused him to pull the trigger,
Yeah.
right? But if you know anything about guns, you need to have some force when it comes to pulling the trigger. It's
Yeah.
not like you accidentally bump a trigger and then it's going to
Yeah.
go off. I mean, so you have to squeeze.
Yeah.
So you're not going to bump your hand and like
Whoops,
have
there
some
it
sort of
goes.
reaction in which you're going to squeeze it enough to pull the trigger. Now, he would go on to tell detectives that after Brad was shot, he cleaned up the blood and put Brad's body in the 90-gallon trash bin.
The 12-year-old did this.
A 12-year-old did this,
Okay.
yes.
Picked up a dead
He
weight
stated,
body and put it into a trash can.
yes, he did.
Okay.
That's what he says.
Okay.
Okay.
If you've ever
He
carried a
stated,
sleeping child, you'd know how hard
oh,
that
yeah.
is. You know how hard
Hmm.
that is for a 12-year-old to be carrying another 12-year-old. I mean,
I mean,
seriously, carrying a 6-year-old fast asleep is is heavy enough for a small person, let alone a
exactly.
12-year-old
No,
carrying another 12-year-old who's dead.
exactly. And a 90-gallon trash bin is
That's tall.
huge. That's a
Yeah.
huge, yeah. So you're going to have to lift him up and
Absolutely not
lift him in
happening.
there.
I don't think so. I don't think a 12-year-old could pick up a dead weight of another 12-year-old and pick it up and put it into a 90 gallon trash can.
Yeah,
I
it's
can't see it
crazy, isn't it?
happening.
Hmm. Now, Jeremy would state that it took Brad over an hour to die
Oh
and
God.
that he did nothing to render aid or to find help. Did nothing. He watched. He sat there and watched as his supposed friend died.
Mm.
Now, Jeremy Bach would be extradited to Phoenix, where in later interviews he would go into greater detail about what happened after Brad was shot. Now, Jeremy would tell investigators that Brad had been hit by the bullet in his chest near his heart, with the bullet exiting and leaving a hole in the wall. Jeremy stated that Brad fell over on to his side on the floor with his eyes wide open, chest heaving, and foam coming from his mouth.
Which is probably more closer to the truth.
Exactly, yeah. Jeremy says he believed little chunks of his heart were falling out from his chest as it heaved. At first, Jeremy thought that Brad was joking, but finally realized that he had killed him. Jeremy attempted to sit Brad upright, but he kept falling back over. Finally, Jeremy leaned Brad against the kitchen wall, lifted his shirt, and wiped away the blood from Brad's stomach with a rag. Jeremy then turned on some music, started gathering cigarettes they had been smoking, and cleaning up the butts and threw them in the trash, along with the spent shell casing. Jeremy would leave Brad sitting for an hour and a half before wheeling in the trash bin and placing Brad inside. Jeremy would then spend the next 2 hours cleaning the house before Taylor arrived. Okay. Now, one of the this is horrific, right? Already.
Mm.
But another horrific part of this case is that Brad's body was left in that trash bin at the box house for almost 2 weeks.
Mm.
So, I believe it was trash day was the following Tuesday, I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
and Jeremy forgot to take the trash out. So Brad's body was left in that trash bin for another week at the box house before it was finally picked up by
This doesn't make sense. This whole thing does not
it
make
doesn't.
sense. Because
No.
I'm sorry, but you would smell that. I know it's November and it's probably cold,
Mhm.
but you would smell because the body would start to decompose.
Yeah.
A body starts breaking down the minute it dies.
Mhm.
Somebody dies. This doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
And this is Phoenix, Arizona, where we're not talking about, a northern city where, you have where a body's gonna freeze, right?
Mm.
It's gonna be warm, relatively warm throughout.
The other thing that doesn't make sense to me is that the 12-year-old would then clean the house up enough and well enough that there's no
Mhm.
traces of blood to the human eye. I don't believe it. I don't think this
Well,
is right.
here's the thing. So he cleaned up as much as he could.
Mm.
That day, the box or Daniel Bach actually had house cleaners. That the house cleaners came that day
Mm.
and cleaned up the house.
But surely the house cleaners would have noticed. I mean, I'm sorry, but if any of you have
Mhm.
got teenagers, you know how well teenagers clean. They don't clean
Oh, yeah.
properly, and I
Mm-mm.
can't see that this kid cleans up well enough to stop an adult from thinking something
No.
suspicious. So you're telling me those cleaners didn't even look at that and think there seems to be
Well
quite a bit of blood here?
well, I kinda believe that because one of the cleaners would later state that when they were cleaning that they didn't know at the time, but they actually saw Brad's body in the trash.
What? They didn't
They
know.
touched Brad's body,
So how?
but they didn't think it was a body. They didn't think it was a dead body.
What do they
They
think it was?
saw pants. I have no idea. That's what's strange, right?
This case
So
is a
strange.
mess, an absolute mess. It's
Yeah,
ridiculous. This doesn't make sense whatsoever.
it doesn't. No, and I think we're closer to the truth
Closer.
at this point.
Yeah, but not
I don't think we have the
no,
full truth.
not at all. Absolutely not. If I was Brad's family, I would not be happy with this because this is
Mhm.
not a real explanation. I'm sorry, I just can't see a 12-year-old boy being that sophisticated to get away with something like this. I just can't see it. Something's not right. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's it's absolutely insane.
No,
There's
there's
yeah,
stuff missing. There's lots of stuff missing from
there is.
this.
There absolutely is,
Mm,
right? Now, investigators did not believe that this was an accidental shooting.
well done. I could have told you that from 2 paragraphs into this episode.
And
And
right
I'm not an
now,
investigator.
now they theorized that the shooting was over a classmate named Jennifer that Jeremy had
Oh,
been dating,
okay, here we
but who
go.
became interested in
This
Brad.
makes more
Okay.
sense. Okay.
Now this theory came in part from a statement given by a Centennial Middle School teacher who told investigators that she had overheard Jeremy stating, "I'm going to kill him,"
Oh,
2 weeks prior to the shooting.
oh dear.
When she asked Jeremy who he was referring to,
Mm.
he told her Brad Hansen, and that he was trying to steal his woman. Now she would tell him that there are plenty other girls to choose from, but he said, "No, no, I'm going to kill him." The teacher stated that she sent him off to his next class and later recounted the story to fellow teachers in the teachers' lounge.
Right.
So it sounds like this is not just a
Sounds premeditated.
accident.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
100%.
you know what it's like. You know how
100%.
like we we're talking about in our extra episode on Patreon. You know how strong teenagers' feelings are towards each other at school. Boyfriends and girlfriends are
Yeah.
like everything, aren't they? It's the end
Mhm.
of your world when the girl breaks up with you at school.
Yeah.
You're never gonna get over it, or you think you're never gonna get over it. It's devastating.
Mhm.
So this makes a bit more sense to me. This actually
It
makes a little
does.
bit more sense now.
Yep. Exactly. Now, Phoenix police would charge Jeremy with Brad's murder, and the prosecution sought second-degree murder charges,
Mhm.
and Jeremy would be tried as an adult.
Okay.
Okay? At the age of 13, Jeremy was the youngest person to stand trial as an adult in Maricopa County, Arizona.
Okay.
I think this was 100% correct
Yeah, I
because I
agree.
think this is completely
I
premeditated.
agree with you. Yeah. And the
This
fact
was
that he
not an
lied to
accident.
carry it up, cover it up so many times. But then I think
Mhm.
Daniel Brock needs to be prosecuted because he's obviously lied to cover this up lots of times
Oh,
as well.
100%. 100%. But unfortunately, police never had enough evidence to charge Daniel with any sort of crime.
Well, the fact that he wasn't trying to he said that there was no gun in the house.
Bullet hole.
There's a
No
there was a
gun in the
bullet hole
yeah,
that's been patched up in the house.
patched up.
You're telling me he had no idea what happened, and he lied to
Come
police and
on.
said there was no bullet
Oh, yeah.
hole. So I
No,
would
yeah,
I would at
100% correct.
least try and have him, done with trying to pervert the course of justice.
Right. No, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Right?
What
Absolutely
a
right.
douchebag.
Now, during the trial, it would be discovered that Jeremy had suffered years of psychological and emotional abuse at the hands of Daniel Bach.
Yeah, Daniel Book doesn't sound
Okay.
like a very nice guy.
No, Daniel Bach was extremely abusive to both him and Jeremy's mother.
Ugh,
I believe at one point he had actually broken Jeremy's mother's nose in front of him.
God.
But it's believed that Jeremy ended up moving in with Daniel around September 1995. And it was because Jeremy viewed him as a more financially stable person than his mother. So, but I don't think it was the right choice. I mean, it sounds like he had a bad situation either way,
Yeah.
but Daniel Bach was not
It's
the
not that,
right
no,
choice. I mean,
definitely not.
mm-mm, no. Now, the defense team would claim that Jeremy had several emotional deficits and handicaps, which led him to having extremely poor judgment, which
Just a bit.
I agree. Yeah, I agree
I
with
agree.
completely.
Yeah.
And they also stated that he had a school education or education level of a fourth grader. So,
So he
um,
shouldn't be left in charge of children to be a responsible adult.
no, 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 not at all, not at all. And look, with a troubled youth like Jeremy,
Mm,
there's no reason for you to be leaving loaded guns
no.
anywhere in that house.
With any child in the house, you shouldn't be leaving a loaded gun anywhere where that child can get it, no matter what age the child is. You
Right.
just don't
No.
do it. You just don't
Mhm.
leave loaded guns around, period.
Not under couch cushions.
No.
Lock them up.
It
Lock them
frustrates
up.
me so much.
Yeah. Now, in November of 1997, the jury would find Jeremy Bach guilty of
Good.
second-degree murder for the shooting of his classmate, Brad Hansen, in the chest, resulting in his death. When the verdict was read, Jeremy closed his eyes and hung his head in the first and only signs of emotion that he had shown throughout the whole trial.
Wow.
After the trial, jurors would tell reporters that they all took notice of the lack of emotion from Jeremy and stated that it was chilling how he clearly had no remorse for shooting and killing his friend, accident or not.
Mm.
They felt that he had been raised in a cold, unloving, and indifferent environment.
I would be expecting, if I was on the jury, I'd be expecting a 12-year-old that's up in court. I would be expecting that kid to be frightened, sobbing,
Yeah, yeah,
apologetic, worried,
hmm
scared, and he's showing no signs of that.
exactly, exactly. Now, at his sentencing in January of 1998, Maricopa Senior Court Judge Daniel Nastros said that the biggest concern here is that Brad was supposed to be a friend, and a friend is someone to be most humane, sincere, and truthful with. The judge referenced Jeremy's silence in regards to his continued unwillingness to give a complete, truthful account of what happened that morning
Mm.
and whether Daniel Bach was there, stating that when silence comes in, it comes in with extreme contempt. So Jeremy refused to say
Mm.
anything about Daniel's involvement in it, if
Mm.
he was involved or if he wasn't involved. I think well, I know what you think, and I think most people have that know this case or have followed this case or are listening now would say that chances are Daniel Bach was involved one way or the other.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
not in the actual murder, but the cover up of the murder, 100%.
Mm. He knew what happened.
Mhm.
It's really sad.
Now, Judge Nastros would hand down the maximum sentence of 22 years in prison. Jeremy's mother chose not to voice any pleas for leniency on behalf of her son and quietly shook her head when asked if she had the desire to give a statement at his sentencing.
Mhm.
Jeremy, who was now 15 at the time, would leave Phoenix and heads south to a prison in Tucson to become the youngest of 87 minors at a special housing unit for juveniles.
Mhm.
Once he turned 18, he was put into general prison population.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, prior to the trial, so this was about March of 1996. 24 police officers began searching the Butterfield landfill for Brad's body. They would search the landfill every day for 6 weeks at the cost of $100,000, but Brad's body was never found. Jeremy Bach was released from prison on October 2nd, 2018.
So how did he get out so early?
22 years.
Wow. And he'd only be, like, in his early 30s
Now he would be, oh, when he was
when he was
released,
released. 'Cause he had
he
22
would have
years, he was
been,
12. So he would have been
so
34.
12. He was sentenced in 98. So he was in jail for
22
20, no,
years.
late 30s.
So,
Yeah, late
yeah,
30s.
only in his 30s then.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just looking at this. He actually did not have the cleanest of prison records either. I mean, he had numerous offenses while in jail, fights,
Wow, wow,
making
wow.
weapons, contraband. Yeah, so he
And
did
now
his
he's
time,
out
and
free
now
running
he's
the
out.
streets.
And Brad's family still have they still haven't been able to bury their son.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. If the body was placed into that bin, and when they do get around to actually looking in the bottom of the bin, there's 2 inches worth of body fluids, that suggests
Hmm.
that obviously the body's decomposed to such a state that identification would be not
Very, oh,
it's
extremely
not gonna
difficult. Yeah.
happen. And then he's taken to landfill. I mean, if any of you have ever been onto a landfill site, the chances of them finding is very, very slim, especially when they went after. Look how long he'd been there, or his body had supposedly been there by the time they started
Yeah.
looking for him. I mean, there's not going to be very much of
There's
him
a lot.
left, which is horrific for his
If
family because they've never been given him back to be able to bury him somewhere, and have a place to go and see him. I mean, that
Mhm.
is awful.
Now this goes back to the whole police looking at this as a runaway rather than
Yeah,
a missing person, right?
yeah.
If they would have started if they started interviewing Jeremy
Straight
from the
away.
get-go,
Yeah,
straight away,
yeah.
I really feel like the chance of them finding Brad and recovering his body would have been much, much higher.
And the fact that that was the last place he was supposed to have been seen, the police should have been to that house a lot quicker, and then they wouldn't have had a chance to patch up that bullet hole, because it
Mhm.
would have happened straight away. As soon as the mum rang and that kid had not been in the last place that kid was seen, why wasn't there a police officer sent round to that house to talk to
Exactly.
the family to find out what happened?
And Brad's body was supposedly still at the house in
Yeah,
the trash
for
bin for,
2
like,
weeks.
10 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10, I think it was, like, yeah, between 10 to 14 days, he was
So he would
still
have
there.
seen exactly. That's awful, isn't it? That's really bad.
It is really
Poor
bad.
Brad. All over a girl.
Yeah, and he probably had no idea,
Mm,
right?
that's right.
Because let's be honest, when you're 12 years old and and a girl has interest in you, you miss that most of the time, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's awful to think that that kid has, shot him and killed him. I mean, kids know that
Mhm.
shooting someone's going to kill him. He knew what he was doing. He knows
He
what a gun does. We're
Yeah.
not talking about a 5-year-old that's just picked it up, or even a 3 or 4-year-old that's picked up a gun and doesn't know what it does, or doesn't have
Mhm.
the sort of maturity to realize that shooting that gun could kill somebody. A 12-year-old knows what happens when you shoot a gun.
Yeah.
And that's horrific.
And Brad went over there with no idea that something was wrong, right?
Mm,
And that he was gonna be a fight and that he was gonna get shot. He had no idea.
that's really
He probably wanted
awful.
to go over there, play video games,
Yeah, with
hang
his
out with a
friend.
friend,
Yeah,
supposed friend.
yeah. That's so awful. And it must be awful for, I know he's done his time now. He's done the time that he was sentenced to, and now he's a free man. But I mean, like Brad's family, to know that this guy is now out having a life, that must be so hurtful for them every day, you know?
Mhm.
That just must be, it's just so hard. That's really hard.
Yeah. I mean, normally I have, like, some sort of sympathy for kids, children
Mm.
that are involved in cases like this where they've committed murder or accidental or not,
Yeah.
but there's just something about Jeremy where I don't I don't think he ever felt remorse. I mean, I can't talk,
No,
say now,
no.
but even if he were to come out and, like, say, "I feel really bad for what I did.
Yeah.
What I did was
Yeah.
wrong." I don't know if I could believe him
Mm. Yes.
because this is a kid who from the time that he had shot Brad through the trial, through his sentencing, never showed any sign of remorse that he felt bad for what he did.
And your counsel will tell you, dress in a certain way. You make sure that you act in I mean, that's why they make women dress demurely. They make people
Mhm.
they tell you how to behave in court because they want the jury to go lenient on you. So they even tell you how to do that. And the jury have looked at him and said, like, he's showing no remorse whatsoever. And I
Yeah.
know it's people do have this argument that, oh, yeah, they were brought up in a really bad environment. That's no excuse. It's no excuse. A 12-year-old knows that
Mhm.
murder is wrong. A 12-year-old knows what will happen if you shoot a gun at another person. That kid, whether he's had a bad upbringing or not, knows what happens when you shoot a gun. So he consciously made that decision to do that, whether he had an
Yeah.
awful upbringing or not. I know lots of people that had really bad upbringings. They're not murderers.
Mm-mm.
It's not an
Yeah,
excuse. The whole I've had a bad upbringing is not an excuse. It's such a sad case. It's really, really awful.
it is. Now, should we note that actually at the same time of as Jeremy's trial, Daniel Bach was actually awaiting a criminal trial himself
There's a surprise.
for fraudulent schemes and for failing to pay back almost $1 million in previously ordered restitution.
Oh,
So,
blimey.
um, Daniel Bach, he not a great guy.
Definitely not a responsible step parent. Definitely not.
No, absolutely not.
What a sad case.
Very sad. So there you have it.
My heart goes out to Brad's family. That's really awful. But thank
Mhm.
you for telling us
Yeah,
about that case. I'd never heard of that case before. So that was an interesting case to listen to.
yeah, real sad. So
So, this is the part of the show where we try and lift spirits a little bit. And this one will lift your spirits. So, this is the time when we ask Captain to come in and introduce a segment that we like to call the Dumb Criminal. And this guy is a real dummy. So, in 1995, a middle aged man robbed two Pittsburgh banks in broad daylight. Okay. Now, he
okay,
did this without wearing a mask or any sort of disguise. And
it's
he
brave.
also looked up at the surveillance cameras at each bank and smiled at them before he left. Okay.
W- Okay, confident,
Very
very
confident, like very
confident.
brazen. Okay. So later that
Yeah.
night, the cops arrested him. Okay. His name was MacArthur
Okay.
Wheeler. They arrested him. And when they arrested him, he was really shocked. He didn't know how the hell they caught him. Okay. They showed him the
Okay.
surveillance tape. And he stared at them like in complete disbelief. And he said, "But I wore the juice." And police were like,
Wh-
"What? What do you
what?
mean you wore the juice?" Now, apparently, MacArthur Wheeler believed that rubbing lemon juice on your skin makes you invisible to security cameras.
Oh no.
So this guy covered himself in lemon juice before robbing the banks. Hence why he looked straight at the cameras in a real cocky manner, because he believed he was invisible and that no one would see him.
No.
Needless
Are
to
you
say,
serious?
he was sentenced and charged for bank robbery on 2 accounts.
Oh, that guy needs some help.
Just when you think that people can't get any stupider. I don't know who told him
Lemon
that.
juice on the face
Yeah.
makes you invisible.
Lemon juice on your skin makes you invisible to security cameras.
No,
Hence why he covered himself in
no.
lemon juice.
Lemon juice, you can put lemon juice on a paper for invisible ink.
Yep.
That works, right?
But not on your face.
Not on your face.
So if you're going to
That's
rob
not
a bank, people,
oh.
don't cover yourself in lemon juice. Or do, because it's actually quite a funny. It's actually quite a funny outcome. So yeah, feel free.
Oh, no. That poor guy.
I know, and he was really shocked. He truly believed that he was invisible to cameras. Oh, bless him.
Oh,
I
man.
know. I read that and I was just like, seriously? He seriously thought that? And yeah, the police were just laughing because obviously it's hilarious, silly guy. So there we are. That's
That's
our dumb
hilarious.
criminal
That's
for this
funny.
week. If you've got a dumb criminal for us, if you've heard of a really good one, feel free to send it because we'd love to hear them. They just get worse and worse every week, to be fair. So you can email them over to us, either cherry@crimepediapodcast.com or morgan@crimepediapodcast.com, or send it over Instagram, wherever you want to. And thank you for joining us this week. It's been some interesting case this week. We'll be back next week with a Halloween case for you. And for now, be nice.
And bye.